The Secrets of Star Trek is brought to you by the StarQuest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. This is Dom Bettinelli. I want to encourage you to stick around after the end of today's episode when we'll have a special extra bonus for you. Jimmy, Father Cory, and I recently recorded a special episode of Secrets of Star Trek for our patrons at patreon.com/StarQuest to thank them for their generosity in making this and all our shows at StarQuest possible. We discussed the latest news concerning new Star Trek TV shows and new seasons and a movie and gave them early exclusive access. But now we're sharing it with you to show you one of the benefits of being a patron. We hope you enjoy it and hope you consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/StarQuest. You're listening to The Secrets of Star Trek episode 151.
Captain to bridge.
Spock here.
Make it so. Surrender is not an option.
Attention crew of the Enterprise, this is James Kirk.
We are all explorers, driven to know what's over the horizon, what's beyond our own shores.
We would have helped you get home if you had asked. That's who Starfleet is.
Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of Star Trek, where we discuss the hidden layers and deeper meanings found in all the Star Trek TV series, movies, and more. And today we're discussing the Enterprise episode, Sleeping Dogs. And joining me today on the panel are Father Cory Stika. Hi, Father Cory.
How's it going, Dom?
Very well, thanks. And Jimmy Aiken. Hi, Jimmy.
Yeah, whatever.
And folks, remember to follow The Secrets of Star Trek in Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, your favorite podcast app, or on the SQPN YouTube channel, where you should also hit the bell to get notifications. And be sure to stick around to the end of the episode. We have some more of your listener feedback. Jimmy, was your whatever, is that about the podcast or about this episode of Enterprise?
Oh, about the episode, of course.
I thought so.
It's just a meh episode. It's boring. It's like, what is the point of this one?
Yeah, it's
about as energetic as a sleeping dog, so it's an appropriate.
Yeah. It gives us more pre-TOS Klingon, I think, is the idea. But let me give you a quick recap of the episode, and we can go from there. The Enterprise stops to examine a Class 9 gas giant and discovers a ship and life signs deep in the atmosphere. T'Pol, Reed, and Hoshi take a shuttle to go investigate and find a disabled Klingon scout vessel with the crew apparently unconscious. Or at least most of the crew. They try to work out how to save the ship and crew before it descends too far into the atmosphere, and it's crushed like a tin can when they're attacked by a Klingon who steals their shuttle pod and strands them there. Enterprise intercepts the shuttle, and Archer has to negotiate with the hostile and suspicious Klingon woman to help her and her crew. Phlox figures out that the Klingons have been poisoned with a neurotoxin that they ingested in some bad ale they stole from people who apparently were done being victimized by Klingons in the ultimate workplace refrigerator prank. If you get that reference, let's talk about it in a second. Meanwhile, on the Klingon ship, they start using the explosions from photon torpedoes to raise the ship high enough in the atmosphere to make contact with Enterprise. Archer takes the Enterprise into the atmosphere, makes contact with the crew, gets the Klingon woman on board. She helps restart the engines. Kabing, kabang, kaboom. And then, rather than express gratitude, the Klingon captain tries attacking the Enterprise, which, in disgust, flies away. Yes, the ship literally is in disgust and flies away. Yes. The title of the episode, Sleeping Dogs, is, of course, a reference to the old phrase, better to let sleeping dogs lie, which is not necessarily true, right? Because if they'd let sleeping dogs lie, they would have died, right?
Yeah, so this episode is trying to, in addition to showing us Klingons, this episode is trying to show a progression in a very paint-by-numbers way in the evolution of Archer and Hoshi. Hoshi, thus far, has been very skittish about all this space travel stuff, and now she's volunteering to go on a mission. And they openly acknowledge this is a change in attitude on her part. At which point I wrote in my notes, Hoshi's new resolve will be tested, or it will just be bad writing. if they let her new resolve drop, which is what they did.
Yeah.
Archer, meanwhile, is theoretically learning more about how to interact with alien races, including Klingons, instead of just having this boyish, gee whiz, golly gosh, let's all be friends attitude that he's had up to now. And this episode theoretically teaches him that he needs to learn to think like other members of other races, including Klingons, if he's going to deal with them successfully. And so, yeah, it kind of takes the edge off of the let sleeping dogs lie thing. That was T'Pol's attitude from the beginning of we shouldn't mess with these people. They're passed out at their stations. This is an honorable death for them. It assures them a path to the afterlife. They don't want us to rescue them, and if we try, they will try to kill us.
Yeah, she keeps telling them over and over again. Klingons
over and over.
And over and over. Yeah, it gets tiresome. The Klingons don't ask for help. Klingons don't abandon ship. Klingons don't surrender. Klingons don't, and I was like, but that's not true. We've seen Klingons in DS9 and Voyager and TNG all doing that.
Yeah, it's Klingons don't have escape pods and all kinds of stuff. It's like, okay, then Klingons would not be out in space if they had that level of asociality in their culture.
Right.
Well, and she, supposedly knows all this stuff about Klingons, but she didn't recognize a Klingon ship.
I know. As soon as it comes on screen, even though they're kind of fuzzing it up a little bit with static, I said, "Oh, that's a Klingon ship."
Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
none of them recognize it.
You at least recognize the configuration. If you don't recognize the specific model of ship, you say that's how Klingons design their ships. Hey, yeah, it's kind of silly.
And admittedly, this is still T'Pol being where I'm the superior Vulcan, you're the inferior humans. You need to do what I say, and you're ridiculous to do otherwise.
Right. And she's, again, semi-proven right, although it all ends up well, but she's, they prove the right that, the Klingons will not react well to this. There's another interesting flaw in the writing of Hoshi in this, which is on Enterprise, Hoshi's like to Archer, I need to go on this away mission. What if he's like, well, they have universal translators. Well, what if they have to read signs and consoles? They'll need me. Well, on the ship, T'Pol tells her to start translating the consoles, and she says, well, reading Klingon is different from speaking it. Well, that's why you're here.
and just whip out your iPhone and use the augmented reality translate that we have right now.
Yeah.
Right. Why could they not imagine that?
Yeah, if you have a smartphone and you've got, let's say it's a package of food from China or something, and it's got Chinese writing all over it, you can take your phone and use Google Translate and hold it over the writing, and it will translate it for you.
It might be a rough translation, but it'll give you the general idea of what it's saying, usually.
You'll see plasma injector on the screen.
Yeah.
Which is what she has to do. Yeah, I thought that was a weird disconnect in the like nobody caught that. Like, was she lying?
Oh, and that wasn't the only technologically dumb thing in this, because when the shuttle pod, okay, so Hoshi has trouble reading the Klingon stuff on their control panels as they're trying to figure out the Klingon ship. The Klingon, who has not even heard of humans and doesn't know what they are, is able to fly their shuttle pod
and activate
no problem.
The radio system too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes no sense. And then they use the grappler since they don't have tractor beams. On one of my repeated criticisms of Enterprise, at least in my internal monologue, is how they never really take away a technology that we saw in the original series. They make it look harder to use, but they never get rid of it. So they've got a transporter, it's just a little harder to use. Instead of shields, they have hull plating. Instead of phasers, they have phase pistols. In fact, in place of photon torpedoes, they have some other equivalent of photon torpedoes. Instead of a tractor beam, they've got a grappler. And it's, come on, guys. I mean, it's okay to have them just missing a technology and then right around it. Saying hull plating to full is exactly the same as saying shields to full. It doesn't, it's just a cosmetic difference. It's not a real writing difference, and that's cheap. Well, okay, here they use a grappling hook to retrieve the shuttle that the Klingon is flying. Hasn't anyone heard of Bluetooth?
Right.
Can't you just get the shuttle to come back by Bluetooth?
Command
control.
codes.
Yeah.
Command codes. Wrath of Khan. I mean, they had it all the way back in 1983.
And we have it now. We can take control of planes and fly them remotely.
Well, and I mean, they have the torpedoes, which are literally just rockets.
Yeah.
You know, that's literally all they are.
They're missiles. Yeah.
But photon torpedoes exist. In this episode, Malcolm says, ooh, photon torpedoes, those sound interesting.
Right.
It's
right. The Klingons
okay,
already
so
have the technology. So
Klingons
yeah.
have it, Vulcans have it, the humans just don't. That's all
Right.
it is, which
Right.
they will eventually.
Another interesting element they add to this episode, and I'm not sure why they added it, was Malcolm's cold. Why does Malcolm have a cold?
I wanted to talk about that. So there's, you know how boring this episode is. Well, like we commented on a previous first season Enterprise episode, there's clear evidence of padding. And the padding in this episode starts in the very first scene, which is Hoshi, for some reason, and Malcolm in a cargo bay doing target practice with a new type of phase pistol that Hoshi's having trouble getting used to. And this plays absolutely no role in the plot. It's
Right. She
just
never
there.
uses it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just there to fill up time before the opening credits. That's its only function. So it's clear padding. And also, he develops his first sign of a cold in this. And its only function in the plot is to set us up for a second padding scene where he goes down to sickbay and he's suffering more from the cold now in the presence of Dr. Phlox. And they talk about the common cold, and you'd think we'd have a cure for it now, and how did he get it? And this is just more padding.
Mm.
Because it also plays no role in the plot. Now, several of the things that they say in this are ridiculous, like Phlox postulates that he got the cold because someone back at space dock was packing a container and breathed into it, and the virus has been live in there for 5 months. Okay, no, that's not how viruses work, as we have all learned. And a cold virus is you're not gonna have sufficient titers of live cold virus for 5 months in a container with no ability for the virus to replicate itself. It will have degraded to the point of non-infectability by that point. But all of this is just padding, as illustrated by the fact that, also, the doctor says, well, Malcolm wants to go on this mission, and the doctor says, well, I don't suppose you'll be contagious or infectious in your pressure suit. Mm-hmm. So, of course, they all take off their pressure suits for most of the episode. They're in for like a scene.
Right.
And it's okay. So obviously we're not caring about the let's not infect people anymore. That's just gone out the window, as does Malcolm's entire cold.
Right.
He just stops suffering from it once they get onto the Klingon ship and the main plot is underway. He's not even attempting to alter his voice or sound nasal or coughing or anything like that. The cold just goes away because all of that was padding.
Well, the cold existed for one very important scene. I mean, this is so primary to the whole episode. When they open their pressure suits and Hoshi and T'Pol react, and Malcolm's like, oh, I can't smell because of my cold. That literally is the whole purpose of the cold, is that one scene where he doesn't smell how vile the Klingon ship is. And yes, you could say, oh, well, the Phlox's little injection finally worked when he was on the ship. But it's like, come on.
Phlox Benadryl.
I mean, that really does show how much is going on in this episode, that the most interesting thing about it is the ridiculousness of Malcolm's cold.
Yeah. I don't know if I'd say that's the only reason it exists, but that's the payoff. That's the only payoff.
Yeah.
Also, remember how exciting it was when they found Archer's comet a few episodes ago?
Yes.
And it's like, come on, there's 1 trillion of them in our solar system. Who cares? Mm-hmm. This is not a major discovery. Well, here we have, it's a Class 9 gas giant. Yeah. And it's the boringest gas giant ever. It doesn't have rings. It doesn't have moons. It doesn't have bands on the surface. It's like we don't even see the whole thing. All we see is some orangey clouds.
Yeah.
Apparently it's bigger than Jupiter, though, so I guess.
But they make it sound like this is this fascinating thing that we need to discover, and
I'm with Paul on that one. She was suitably unimpressed.
Yeah,
You got 3 of them in your own solar system. Why not explore those? But it's not class 9.
yeah.
Ooh.
They do one thing that's a little semi-interesting with it, which is when they first encounter it, they discover that, it's emitting radio frequencies, which gas giants do.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Jupiter does that. Yeah, they do that because they have electrically active atmospheres like Jupiter does, or they can anyway. And they play us a little bit of the radio transmissions they're getting adapted into human sound frequencies. And Mayweather says, those are siren calls. That's what we called them when I was a kid on the space freighter, which is my only character trait.
Yeah.
And what it really sounds like, though, is whale song.
Right.
Yes,
But
my thought was, Scotty, Captain, there be whales here.
yeah.
Yeah. But again, they don't do anything with that. More padding.
Yeah.
Like that's just all that's served to do. So we have a ticking clock problem, right? This is the typical plot device of we're running out of time. We have a half hour. We have exactly the runtime of the episode remaining in order to solve our problem, and we will, at the very last second, solve our problem. What I find interesting is none of the Klingons ever awake. That was the thing. There was the one Klingon woman who was hiding in the freezer and escaped in the shuttle. But none of the other Klingons on board woke up, and that would have been an interesting story, right? That now we're trying to save you, and we're trying to deal with hostile, people who own the ship, trying to communicate with them and trying to work together to save the ship. That would have made it more interesting, and probably would have obviated the need for padding, frankly. But they didn't do that. That seemed obvious to me.
Yeah, they're just all asleep from this neurotoxin, which will kill you in 2 days, but until then you're apparently fine.
Yeah.
Either fine or asleep, because
Yes.
the female officer, Bukah, is fine. But yeah, I don't think they say it, but certainly the implication that I got, and that it sounded like you got, Dom, is that the local space aliens, the Zarantine, who we never see, that the Klingons have been raiding, spiked their ale that they knew that with this neurotoxin that they knew the Klingons were going to take. And so the Klingons then raided them. And it's interesting the way Bukah describes this to Archer after the fact. She says a raid occurred. And that's not the way a person who comes from a raiding culture talks about a raid, because that's the language of this is a shameful thing, and so I'm distancing myself from it by describing it in the passive voice and saying a raid occurred rather than we raided them.
Yes.
Right? And they got the ale, and apparently the entire crew drank it and either died, fell asleep, or are perfectly fine.
Right. That was the other thing that could have been interesting too, by the way, is so we had the Klingons could have woken up, or we could have had one of the Klingon vessels that Picard was trying to contact, by the way, show up. And so Archer's would have been having to deal with the Klingon ship that's hostile to them outside the atmosphere, and trying to save the Klingon ship inside the atmosphere. That also would have made an interesting plot device.
Instead of 13 hours away.
Right. Like, oh, okay, so we don't have to worry about that. Like, a Klingon ship is coming from 13 hours away. Well, that's not going to matter at all to this episode. I did kind of like the tour through the Klingon Galley. That was kind of fun.
I liked the galley. I recognized some of the vegetables from okay, those are Chinese cucumbers.
Yeah.
And I liked getting to see live targ, which they have in a
abattoir.
Well, it's like a freezer unit,
right,
but it's not freezing because it's just got live targ in it. And it actually made me start thinking about, targ bacon. That would be cool.
Yes.
But there's not much to that.
My guess would be undercooked.
Yeah, it might be. But I mean, I would be so targ bacon is an interesting concept. If I were a writer, I would pick that up.
Yeah, that
because
would totally.
targs are clearly pig-like and humans love bacon, and I would play with that concept in the writing, but they don't.
Klingon boars. So what do you think of the solution of blowing up bombs underneath the ship to raise it in the atmosphere?
It seems a lot of the kind of the submarine Navy type movie of, if we blast a torpedo underneath us, the shockwave will push us higher so we don't get crushed. I think we've seen movies do that before.
Yeah. Although that's usually how you're supposed to destroy submarines, is to blow up explosions next to them underwater, because water doesn't compress very well.
Yeah.
And shockwaves break things.
They are in gas here, but then that's although it's apparently intensely pressurized gas that would be sufficient to crush them. So it's got to have the density, way more density than water, because you have to have ships pressurized at least up to 2 atmospheres so that they don't burst in space. And this is apparently a tough Klingon ship that can stand even more than that. But it's got a low profile, and I think using the photon torpedoes to push them I think it could have been done a lot better.
Yeah.
If you're going to do that. And it's done in a really paint by numbers way where, we've got to get it just right or we're going to crack ourselves open, and let's just launch them all.
Yeah.
And
also,
the funny part.
Hoshi's the one, let's take the risk. Hoshi's the one saying, let's take all the risks.
Yeah,
right.
So that kind of takes the Hoshi's new resolve is either going to be tested or it's just bad writing, and answers that question.
Yes.
Well, then they have enough time for T'Pol to teach her some basic Vulcan meditation as they're sitting in this galley that completely grossed her out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some visualization. Yeah.
I also was distracted by the fact that they go over in these pressure suits, and they have a line early on to cover it, that if the ship's hull fails, they'll be crushed even though they're in their pressure suits. But they're in this kind of Hail Mary situation where we're doing everything we can to try to save ourselves, even if it's implausible. Put on your pressure suits again. That'll at least buy you some time.
Perhaps, right.
But walking around, it's okay, even on airplanes, if there's a risk that the hull of the airplane is going to breach and it's going to depressurize, the masks drop. If you're walking around in a ship that you know is going to have a hull failure soon, keep your pressure suit on.
In fact, they do
running around in your underwear.
They do have a hull failure at one point, but are far enough from it that it doesn't decompress the whole ship. But still, it's they've got clear evidence that things can crack and not destroy the ship. So you might as well don't take a chance. Yeah.
There's also a bit where Tucker proposes. Now, they brought the Enterprise down into the atmosphere at this point, but they still need to find a way to dock with this, or to get to this ship, or to dock with it. And why? And they're having trouble finding it because implausible reasons. But rather than just dock the Enterprise with this ship, which, the Enterprise has docks, it's got a docking interface too. They decide to use a shuttle. And Tucker says, well, we can reinforce the shuttle with unobtainium braces. And I'm dubious of that working because it's not the... anyway, I'm dubious of that working. But... okay, so why is it Tucker himself and Captain Archer doing the welding?
Right.
It's like he's got an engineering staff. I can buy Tucker maybe doing that, but it should be Captain Archer is not a professional welder.
He's got nothing else to do.
Other things to worry about. Yeah.
Right.
And they did explain why they didn't take the Discovery Enterprise down. Because they reached the crush death, the Enterprise, and the Klingon ship is much better. The hull is much stronger, and all this, and basically we have to get we can't make it, so we got to do something else. Oh, I know. Let's take this shuttle that is a tin can and try to reinforce it so that it can survive at those depths.
Yeah, like a shuttlecraft is going to be tougher than the entire Enterprise.
Well, and the captain has to fly her to it. It can't be anybody else, not Merriweather.
Kind of waving hand, That's been an issue since the original series, so I kind of give him a pass, even though, yes, it occurs to me every time he shouldn't be doing this. But
That's true. That's true. And he uses his knowledge of his new knowledge of Klingon psychology because he's studied up to gain her trust.
The Vulcan database had 700 pages on them. Really, that's all.
Yeah. You'd think from T'Pol that they wrote a book.
Yes. And 500 of those pages are about how Klingons don't surrender. They never give up. they don't. They want to die at
they don't.
Yes, they want to die at their stations. Yes, that's a lot of that.
Also, there's a bit later in the episode where they're objecting to what the humans are doing because this would be a dishonorable death for them. And I'm going, why would this be a dishonorable death? I mean,
right.
It wasn't earlier.
Yeah, passing out at your station and getting crushed that seems dishonorable to me. You didn't die in battle. You died through a stupid accident. Or
you
something.
Died with your boots on. You died at at your station. That I can buy that. But how has that changed?
Yeah.
Later on in the episode, why would it? Why is it suddenly dishonorable now when it wasn't before?
I just want to say it seems like this was T'Pol doesn't really know as much about the Klingons as she thinks she does, kind of thing. Where she thinks, they would see this as honorable. Now, obviously, the Klingons don't like strangers coming on their ship and trying to help them.
Mm-hmm.
That's true, but that that they would see this as an honorable death to be crushed in the atmosphere of a gas giant instead of in actual battle. And then we find a real Klingon that says that would be a dishonorable death.
Right.
So,
yeah.
This is a retreat from the complex writing we had of Klingons, because even though they were always overblown, aggressive stereotypes, I mean, they're virtually parodies, of an alien race in many situations that is overly aggressive. They're like Lobo from DC Comics. They're ultra violent.
Mm-hmm.
And Lobo, if you don't know the character, is a deliberate parody of over-violent characters. And the Klingons often come across like that. Like this can't be serious. But at least in other series, if you push back, they respect you. Like when Nog pushes back on Martok and Martok takes a liking to him.
Yeah.
And we have none of that here. They are just one-dimensional, overly aggressive stereotypes without even that second redeeming dimension.
Right. Yeah, that's true. That seemed to be the common way of portraying them in Enterprise whenever they encounter them, because they have to be the enemy. They have to be the enemy that they're going to be at the beginning of TOS, and so therefore they're one dimensional. Which is interesting, given that Discovery, for whatever flaws it has, at least the Klingons are multidimensional. They have some depth. There's different kinds of Klingons and different times when we're friendly and not, and that sort of thing.
And they could have done that here. They just chose not to because of unimaginative writing.
Right. All right, and then we end with them in decontamination.
Which is another padding scene.
Yeah,
nothing happens in it.
I was gonna say, what's the point of the scene except for the producers to put attractive characters in their underwear on screen for a couple minutes because we want to increase our teenage audience or something.
At least this time they just sit there and they don't do anything suggestive.
Yep.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it is kind of weird. Although there is this little thing with T'Pol where we have this character moment where she kind of agrees with them to then do stay in there longer, to kind of a little white lie.
So Phlox gets on the horn and says, "You can go now. Your decontamination is over." And they apparently, even though I would be bored out of my mind there, they're all just sitting there, not even looking at their phone. They're just sitting there with their eyes closed in the blue light, and they're apparently treating it like this is a relaxing spa, and they don't want to go back to their work. And this emerges over the course of the little short scene that they are enjoying this, which is implausible to me and not what I think at the beginning of the scene. But then Hoshi and Malcolm get T'Pol to lie and say that she has a headache and maybe the doctor should run some more scans so they can stay in there for 30 more minutes.
Mm. Yeah. Yes, because Vulcans don't lie, as we've been told. Yeah, they do. We've seen them plenty of times. White lies and black lies.
Here's a stupid question with this whole decon thing. Phlox says, well, we've taken care of all the microbes.
Mm-hmm.
Yet he said they don't have a cure for the common cold.
Yeah.
Wouldn't say decontamination that takes care of all the microbes that could be with them, say, take care of the common cold?
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, just a silly thought. Because there could be viruses over on the Klingon ship that couldn't be treated any other way. So, I mean...
It is bad writing to put an incurable common cold in the same episode that you're making a point about how effective your decontamination is.
That's right.
I mean, it's just a silly question.
Yeah.
And speaking of bad writing, so in order to increase the ticking clock factor towards the end of the episode, we're told there are like 2 birds of prey because the Klingon lady got a message off. And we're told they've detected like a couple of birds of prey coming in at high warp, and they're going to be here in 16 minutes. And I found it, and then that's when they solve the problem and get the ship working, and everyone is conscious again, all of the crew that was asleep. And Archer is back on the bridge of the Enterprise. And I assume some time has passed. And I'm going, because how do you do all that quickly, you know? And I'm going, wait, what happened to the Klingon birds of prey that were coming in at high warp? Are you just not going to address them in the end of this episode and what happened with them? And then it turns out they're not here yet. So this is implausible. You got all of that stuff done in 16 minutes. And I'm like, why aren't you why are you just leaving? Why aren't you talking to these ships? You know, you could be talking to them on radio now. Right. And I think that they were just thrown in, and you've been taking all of this other time with padding that you could be spending on dealing with these ships.
Right.
Because that's where the real threat is in this, you know, is these new ships that are theoretically going to want to kill you. And you shouldn't be wasting time with all of this padding. You should be focusing on that. But I think that because the writers were so limited in their imagination about what the Klingons need to be in this episode, they couldn't think of anything more creative than just the how dare you get on our ship and try to help us stuff that we've already been doing, you know, and it would just repeat that, so they left it out. Well, then be a little more creative. Have the ships show up, and after you've saved their buddies down on the planet, say, oh, thank you so much. We appreciate that. Well, that's what I was saying. That would be a nice reversal of expectations. It would be much more creative, and it wouldn't repeat the things you've been hammering us with. It would show them as more complex.
That's what I was saying earlier. Like, you have the Klingon ships show up earlier, and then have Enterprise having to deal with them in orbit while trying to save the ship in the atmosphere. And maybe the Enterprise goes into the atmosphere in order to escape from those other ships, and you create more tension, you create more problems, more complexity. That would be interesting.
Right. And that's one way of doing it. You also could just have them do what they have here, you know, where they've saved them before the ships arrive. Yeah. But then have the ships arrive and be grateful.
Right.
Or have Archer using his newfound Klingon relationship knowledge, you know, how to win Klingon friends and influence Klingons, you know, knowledge that he has now.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
But, you know, they were so creative in this that they dipped really deep for the casting. The Klingon captain is Von Armstrong, also known as Admiral Forrest.
Well, there's a reason they did that. It was the guy, they actually had someone else cast, and he had to drop out at the last second. So they put Von Armstrong in to
but
play.
Still, I mean, that shows how creative they were at this. Is they just said, "Oh, you're already on the cast, so let's just bring you in."
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, he's actually played. I think he played a Klingon once before, in a different series. I think in TNG. I think, which is interesting. So he knew how to do it. Anything left to say about this episode?
Glad it's done.
Okay. Jimmy?
Nah.
Okay. I want to get to our listener feedback, but first, we want to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create The Secrets of Star Trek, including Patrick C., Heidi M., Helen O., Michael S., and Eric R. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue The Secrets of Star Trek and all the shows at StarQuest. You can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. We have some feedback from our good friend, Father Andrew Kinstetter, the host of The Secrets of Star Wars, right here on SQPN. And he said on our Galaxy Quest discussion, he says, I loved your Galaxy Quest episode. I had a particular perspective to share regarding meeting celebrities at conventions. I agree with what you guys said. In my experience at cons, I've gone to many Comic-Cons, and I wear my priest collar with a geeky shirt, so I end up being approached more than normal for that too, and experience a bit of the celebrity side of things as well, just to a drastically smaller degree. My experience as an attendee has been similar in that celebrities tend to be themselves, not their characters, at cons, although they talk about their characters a lot. In particular, I was almost surprised by one encounter with an actress, Jenna Coleman from Doctor Who, who I immediately identified as an introvert. My interaction with her was not as interactive as I thought it would be, because her character she played was much more outgoing. As I reflected on it later, although at first I was disappointed because I was hoping for more interaction, I quickly came to realize as an introvert myself, I could totally relate to that, and quickly left my disappointment behind, was happy for an encounter I had with the person she is, not the character she played. On the other hand, I also encountered Alex Kingston, who plays River Song, and she had almost the exact same personality as River Song.
Yeah,
so
I can see that.
Yeah, some actors mirror their characters more than others. And he says, thanks for an awesome discussion on definitely my favorite Star Trek episode of all time.
Well, it is interesting, though, when you do see, again, as I said when we talked about Galaxy Quest, that I had not ever been to a con. I've never met, any, major celebrity like that. But when you do see, like, documentaries where you can kind of tell you're seeing some of the actual actor, and you're like, now I see why that character is the way they are, because that's exactly who the actor is.
Right.
Yeah.
They just played themselves, basically.
Right. Some actors are character actors in the sense of they create a character and they inhabit it, and some actors just do themselves in a role. Nicolas Cage comes to mind for that.
Mm-hmm. I'm fascinated by what actors. So, in the context of a panel discussion, like at a convention, it can be interesting to hear what the actors have to say. But, like, you may remember some years ago when DVDs were first coming out and they'd have commentary tracks by the director and the writer, and then one for the actors and stuff. After a while, I learned not to listen to the actor commentary tracks because the actors just do not have insight on what's going on. It's like, we filmed this with cameras, and that day was so hard. Remember that? And I'm much more interested in hearing what the producers and the directors have to say, and the writers have to say.
Yeah, I would say that's pretty much tracks with my experience. I used to follow different actors like on Twitter or various social media. I stopped after a while because I realized that's not something I want to do.
Well, it's kind of funny to think of that actors usually don't actually see the entire episode.
Yeah.
They film them out of order. Like they'll film, like sometimes where they'll have maybe like 2 or 3 episodes in a location, they'll film those chunks from that location.
Yeah.
And then film the rest of the episodes wherever else they're going to be. So
they
don't really just go through start to end with episodes. So.
I think actors are much better when they're not commenting on an episode, when they're just sharing stories and can lie and make up entertaining stuff.
Yes, that's right. That's right. All right. Thank you, Father Andrew, for your feedback on that. We really appreciate it. So that's it from us. What did you think of this episode of Enterprise, Sleeping Dogs? You can let us know by commenting on the show at sqpn.com/trek or our Facebook page at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia, or send an email to trek@sqpn.com. We'll be back next time when we'll be discussing the first season Discovery episode, Vaulting Ambition. Until then, Father Cory Stika, thank you for joining me and sharing the secrets of Star Trek.
Thanks, Dom.
Jimmy Aiken, thank you as well.
Thank you, and kapla.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Star Trek on StarQuest. And remember, if Klingons sense a leader is weak, they'll try to kill him and take command. Let's hope that doesn't happen with podcasts. Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to a special patron-only episode of The Secrets of Star Trek. Joining me today are Jimmy Aiken. Hi, Jimmy.
Howdy, Dom.
Hi, Jimmy, and Father Cory Stika. Hi, Father Cory.
How's it going?
I threw myself off for a second there. So, Star Trek First Contact Day is April 5th, and it's Star Trek's attempt to recreate what Star Wars does with May the 4th. And so we had April 5th this past week, and Paramount Plus, the parent company of all of the Star Trek properties, used the occasion to make all kinds of announcements about upcoming Star Trek productions. That's what I want to say. And so as a special benefit to you, our patrons, we're discussing all the news and the trailers for the new seasons of existing shows and some all-new shows. So let's jump into it. First, I should mention what we don't have, is we don't have much news on Strange New Worlds. That's the Captain Pike series that's coming. We already knew that it was in production and that we have a cast. So that's about it on that. Anything else you guys know on that besides?
2022 is supposedly the date they're going to, it's sometime end of 2022 is supposedly when it's supposed to come out. That's all we really know right now. So,
okay. But we will have Anson Mount and Ethan Peck and Rebecca Romaine and all of that. So that, and plus some new crew members, actors I don't really recognize, but probably people, the crew of the ship. I'm excited to have another story where we feature the Enterprise. That seems to be Star Trek.
If they write Strange New Worlds as well as they did the Pike episodes
season?
Of Pike season of Discovery, it should be really good. And if they do, there's rumors that they're going to go back to the more of the story of the week type episodes instead of the big overarching storyline. That actually could work really well for that. If they do like a 10 episode, just independent stories of the Enterprise type of thing.
Cool.
And even the title of the series suggests that, and I think they've indicated pretty strongly, and that's the direction they're headed. I mean, there may be some season arc, but it may be more like what we get on Doctor Who.
Yeah.
Yep. Where it's kind of a tag on to the episodes. But so that'll be nice. That'll be nice to see kind of the, Alien of the Week, Planet of the Week type of thing again, because I know people have been calling for that with Discovery being basically, here's the big story arc and we're going to talk about it.
Right. Well, another series that does story of the week so far is Lower Decks, which we're going to get first. We're going to get a 12-episode season starting August 12th of 2021 this year. And we got a trailer, which was a lot of fun. It seems just as madcap as the first season was, right?
And they're picking up from where they left off, which has Boimler on the Titans.
Yes.
And but he's going to apparently fairly quickly work his way back over to the ship with the others.
The Cerritos.
Right. Well, he's seeing that being on a hero ship isn't quite all as cracked up to be as they're being blasted, and Riker's using strange jazz references.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Well, and that means that we're going to get Jonathan Frakes back as the over the top Riker, which is just a delight, because Riker already is kind of over the top. So getting this portrayal of him is just a lot of fun. I really enjoy that.
He fits well in a comedic context.
Yes. Yeah. Mike McMahon, the showrunner for Lower Decks, has said that other series like Deep Space Nine are going to be incorporated into the series as well. Because we've had TNG brought in, like with Riker and that sort of stuff. But we're going to get connections to other series that have pre-existed as well. So that should be interesting.
There is one TNG reference that we get in this teaser where we get Mariner in the Cardassian. There are four lights interrogation room.
Yeah.
Yes, she's with Gulma Dread, and she's got him in a headlock, which it looks pretty funny. There's also another TNG reference, which is we see Mariner wearing the outfit for the Embo Jitsu Ultimate Martial Art.
One of the worst early TNG episodes.
Yes, it's the ultimate martial art because you can't see your opponent because they have visors on that blind them.
Yep.
Yeah, so that was from Icarus Factor with the TNG second season. We get some TOS references. We get the Mugatu, the horned white gorillas.
White gorilla.
Yeah,
the gorilla unicorn.
Yeah, which Ransom talks about in the first season. Ransom's the executive officer of Cerritos. He talks about encountering them in the first season, but we're apparently going to see Mugatu, and the Mugatu are going to be menacing some Denobulans, which Dr. Phlox's race, which we haven't seen since Enterprise. So that's interesting. And Pakleds are back. Pakleds were a major problem at the end of the first season.
Right, and if you don't remember them, they're from the Samaritan Snare, which is a bad TNG episode. The Pakleds are like obese and dim-witted, and it's like, make ship go fast now.
Right. Yet they're spacefaring, so
we are strong.
They're kind of scavenger race, that kind of deal.
I think one of the things that Lower Decks does really well is they take all of these bad elements, like not just exclusively. Like Four Lights was one of the best TNG episodes, so they're doing that. But what they really excel is taking the things that we all as fans go oh, and they turn them into funny bits. They turn them into fun aspects of the show.
Which is what DS9 did with the Ferengi and totally redeemed them.
Right.
Exactly.
Yes.
Because the Ferengi were horrible on TNG.
Yes. And then, as we talked about on the episode, the Nagus, they turned them into something completely different and redeemed the Ferengi. So anything else you want to say about the new season of Lower Decks that we got coming?
Well, not in particular, but if people want to see these trailers, they can go on YouTube and just type in the name of the series and trailer.
Yeah, I'll have links
there are
also.
There are also analysis videos with like, here's all the stuff from the trailer.
I'll put a bunch of links on the Patreon post that you'll see on Patreon. Father Cory, what do you think of this? What we saw from this trailer?
I'm looking forward to it. I'm really looking forward to it. I wasn't sure about Lower Decks when it first came out, and I've fallen in love with it, and I can't wait. I can't wait to August. So it's August 12th is when the first episode is going to drop, and I can't wait.
Yeah, and they'll drop weekly. They said that they're going to go weekly, and this time I think we're all in agreement. We're going to cover these like we would a regular, live action Star Trek series, week by week. We'll cover it because Lower Decks does deserve to have a week by week treatment.
And I feel entirely vindicated in that decision because that's what I said from the start.
We can argue about it, and we decided to do it as the patron exclusive, and it's like, no, this needs to be a regular. Frankly, this needs to be a regular episode compared to the next thing we're going to talk about.
Yeah. But I do. That actually gives me an idea, Jimmy, for some swag. There was some merchandise. We're gonna need to make a Jimmy Was Right T-shirt. that would be a good shirt to have. Jimmy Was Right. We could use that for a lot of different shows. So, all right. So that's pretty much it for Lower Decks. There was a bunch of Easter eggs in the trailer, just like they always do. They're dropping lots of references to all the different other Star Treks. But let's talk about Discovery. Apparently, Discovery. So there'll be 12 episodes of Lower Decks starting mid-August. My guess is Discovery will follow on immediately after the end of that season. Yeah. And because it does say 2021, that doesn't leave a whole lot of 2021 left after that. So Discovery is back. We have in the trailer, we're told right off the bat that the theme in this season is togetherness. And we're not alone.
What a spoiler, Dom. I mean, leave the dramatic tension for people.
Yes, we're all together again. Burnham is clearly now the captain, which is kind of funny given that the big thing about Discovery when they were talking about it was this is going to be a series that doesn't focus on the captain, but on the other parts of the crew. Well, I guess you just realized he couldn't sustain that. You have to have a captain, and the captain is, by definition, the leader.
Well, it wasn't even the captain. It was just Burnham. It was the focus, because even the other parts of the crew for the first season were anonymous, other than Lorca and Saru.
Right.
And now all of a sudden, and Tilly. But, it's like half the bridge crew. It's like, who are these people? And only finally in the last season or two have we kind of figured out who they are. So
Kind of.
Right. So
I will say I like the new uniforms. I like the new uniforms.
I was going to comment. Everyone's wearing Babylon 5 uniforms now.
Yeah,
right.
They do look more military. They do look more, more professional than the previous ones. So.
And they look like the rest of Star Trek, right? They're not the blue jumpsuit of the Enterprise, vintage, because it's kind of a evolution from the Enterprise. But now it looks like the rest of the series with the red and the yellow or gold, sorry. And although hospital medical is still white, but I think science is blue.
Blue.
Yeah, I think they're still doing that. So Burnham's captain. Where is Saru? We do see him in the trailer, though.
Yeah, so he's apparently going to be in the series, but I don't know how much.
Yeah, we do see other Kelpians. So when we ended season 3, he was with the Kelpian who destroyed the universe and was going to reintroduce him to Kelpians. So maybe that's what he's doing in this season, is finding his people and bringing this guy back, perhaps. So there's that. I have heard a rumor that we're going to get a Denobulan character who plays a regular role this season. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, they didn't show him yet. They showed that Trill storyline is going to continue, and it's pretty clear that this is going to be, now we're going to make the Federation come together again.
Well, let's mention that because there's Admiral Vance is going to be back clearly because we hear his voice. We don't see him, but looks like we see some Federation civilian leader who's like shaking hands with the Vulcan leader in what may be the beginning of a reconciliation with the Federation.
And there's some big new threat that apparently is going to be what they're going to use to drive everybody back together.
Yep. Right.
A super anomaly, a super gravitational anomaly.
Right. 5 light years across that moves at random through the galaxy. So, well, you got to have something, I suppose. And it's as good as anything.
So something we might want to talk about is something Father Cory alluded to. We really, as a group, all three of us have said we enjoy Lower Decks and want to talk about it. We also privately have talked about, and publicly, I think, have talked about our lack of enthusiasm for Discovery. And one of the things that we've noticed is our download numbers for the podcast drop when we're going through a Discovery season, perhaps because not everybody has the Paramount Plus or, for whatever reason, they're not enthusiastic about Discovery, but we may, as a result, fold Discovery into our regular rotation rather than covering it every week by week when the new season is on.
Yeah.
And that's something that, our patrons could help guide us in, because if they're really enthusiastic about no, we want to hear Discovery broken down live as it's released, we'd want to know about that. But on the other hand, if the patron feeling is, we're not as excited about this and we'd rather hear about other potentially more interesting episodes as part of the regular rotation, then maybe we'll put Discovery in the regular rotation. We don't plan at this point on not covering it, but we just may not cover it live.
We'll do like we're doing with season 1 right now, where we're going back and talking about each episode as we come through in rotation, and we'll just jump to season 4 when we finish up season 1.
But as you said, we were so enthusiastic about Lower Decks that we're going to go through Lower Decks as it comes out, just because we know it's going to be
awesome.
It's fun.
But then that raises some questions about how we handle Picard as well later on, especially if we haven't gotten through all of Discovery's 4th season and the new Picard starts, and how do we deal with that? And
and that's more things that patrons can give us feedback about.
Yes. We'd love to hear.
What do you want to hear?
Yeah, you really help guide how we do the show, so we want to hear from you on what you would like. All right, now let's move on to Picard, because that was the next show that they talked about, and Picard is coming in 2022. When, we don't know. There's sort of an unknown time frame on that, but 2022. And the big takeaway from the second season of Picard is the return of Q. John Delancey is coming back.
Time travel.
And time travel, which Patrick Stewart referenced. He said, we're going to be seeing all kinds of new places and times. He said this in the First Contact Day interview. So there's clearly going to be time travel. John Delancey, in his interview, referred to a shattering moment in Picard's life. So another clue to what this season is going to be about. We know that Whoopi Goldberg is coming back to do Guinan. And if Picard is going through time, and presumably his own timeline, then perhaps we're going to see a bunch of other characters from that we've either heard referenced or seen previously in Star Trek.
And apparently there's a Deep Space Nine tie-in, because visually, they don't talk about it, but visually, in whether it's the real Chateau Picard, den, or it's the holographic Chateau Picard den, we see a reconstruction of an artifact from Bajor that we've seen before in Deep Space Nine in the episode The Reckoning, where the Bajoran archaeologists have dug up this artifact. It's got a bunch of writing on it. It says, "Welcome, Emissary." And it sets up this event called The Reckoning, which they never fully explored. I mean, they
got interrupted.
It got interrupted, involving the Pa Wraiths and the Prophets, and then Sisko smashed the artifact, and Kai Wynn actually was the one who interrupted it. But it looks like Picard has the remains of that artifact and has largely put it back together. And since the Prophets are also wibbly wobbly, timey wimey, that could be part of what's going on too.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
You know, we see in his studio a model of the Stargazer looking, abused. So we might see the actual battle that caused him to vacate the Stargazer, abandon the Stargazer, and so on.
And that would have been another shattering moment in his history.
Yep. Right. Yes. And
losing your ship.
And his best friend, Beverly Crusher's husband.
Jack.
Jack. Yep. We also in the so the teaser is a kind of a fly through the office at the Chateau Picard, right? And there's a whole bunch of things that are little Easter eggs. We have the painting of the Enterprise D and the volumes of Shakespeare that were in Picard's ready room, as well as a sextant from the ready room, an alien
There's
artifact.
His chair.
Yep.
There's his chair from his office chair from his quarters.
That also has the Mintakan tapestry that he gets from the Proto-Vulcans from that episode, Who Watches the Watchers, or I think is what it is.
Yep.
We see a very close close-up of two books stacked on each other, Paradise Lost, Milton's Paradise Lost, and a Dixon Hill novel, The Long Dark Tunnel, which is not a real book. It's from the TNG episode.
And it's credited to Tracy Torme, who is a writer from the first season of TNG.
Yeah. So she
what
probably
I'm really
came up
hoping,
with it. Yeah.
What I'm really hoping for in this one is the return of Benjamin Sisko.
Yes, I think that would be very interesting to see Avery Brooks come back because Sisko, went into the wormhole, and there was never there was always the hope. My hope, let's put it that way, was we'd get from TNG movies to DS9 movies, and we never got that. Because I want to find out what happens to Sisko. Why did he go into the thing? What was the reason? Why was he chosen? All that sort of stuff.
Well, as you know, that was all a patched up thing at the last minute because the original plan was to turn him into a prophet.
Yeah.
And that was Ira Stephen Burr's plan. And Benjamin Sisko said, whoa, wait a minute. Sisko has just conceived a child. I don't like the messaging of a black man abandoning his family. He cannot just go become a prophet. And so they had the I'll be back sometime, maybe tomorrow and maybe yesterday thing.
Yeah.
And I know in books they did recover his character. His character came back. But of course, unlike Star Wars, there's really no canon at least alpha canon in books in Star Trek.
That's right. They don't work. They don't all work together. The DS9 tie-in would be very interesting, and I'd be curious to see how they would do that, or whether maybe it's just we get O'Brien back because he's a TNG, and we have Colm Meaney show up. That would be really cool too. Actually,
he really didn't sound very interested in reprising his character. He did an interview about a month or so ago, and he's like, "Nah, I really don't want to go back."
Colm Meaney.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, he really didn't sound interested in going back and reprising O'Brien. So
interesting.
It does look like Q obviously is going to be a big part of the season, though. I think it's going to be like the overarch is going to be because at the end, John Delancey laughs and says the trial never ends, or the trial never ends. So I think it's going to be like we're going to go back to the trial.
Yeah. Also, so that the trial shows up in the pilot Encounter at Farpoint, and then it shows up in the series finale All Good Things, and then there's that episode in the middle where Picard sort of dies and has It's a Wonderful Life, where Q takes him back to a key turning moment where he was stabbed through the heart by a Nausicaan, and how he reacted to that and how it led to him either becoming or not becoming the man he is. So I'm guessing we're going to be playing heavily with that theme, only we're going to go back to the Stargazer this time.
Yes. Yeah. And to kind of lead us in that direction visually in the teaser, it ends with a view of a Queen of Hearts playing card on a table, and as it blows away and leaving only the Q behind, and then we hear now the one of the YouTube videos that analyzes the trailer makes a point which says in the first season of Picard we saw that Queen of Hearts playing card in the dream sequence with Data at the very beginning, where Data plays a hand of 5 Queens of Hearts or Queen of Hearts cards. And I wonder, is this a Data reference as well? Maybe because if he goes back in time,
Or it could be somehow they've set up the Q thing very subtly in season 1.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, time travel makes everything possible. It means you could encounter any character, living or dead, and so that's why I was thinking of perhaps Data would be back because he was so popular last season. But we don't know anything about the rest of the crew, right? Everyone that Raffi or whatever, we haven't heard. Like, I think we've heard externally, but we don't see them in anything about them in the teaser.
Right.
No, but they're apparently his regular crew now.
Okay. All right. So,
and Brent Spiner's supposed to be back. We're playing soon.
Yeah. Inigo Soong.
All right. So that would be season 2 of Picard, and we'll see how that goes. And the 4th series, am I I'm counting right, is called Star Trek Prodigy. Oh, I don't have a date on this. I don't know if you guys saw a date when they expect this to come out, but my guess is next year.
Yeah, I think it was 2022. This is the Nickelodeon series. It's computer-generated animation, and it's about, my sense is it's basically space cases. I don't know if you may recall back in the 90s, Bill Mumy and Peter David created a series called Space Cases about a group of, it was live action. It was about a group of misfit kids from different planets who find a spaceship and get lost in space and have a Voyager-like experience. Played partly for comedy and partly for drama. Okay. And with a great twist at the beginning of the 2nd season, where it turns out one character's imaginary friend has been real all this time. Oh. But it was meant to go 3 seasons. It only went 2. But this Prodigy thing sounds a lot like it because apparently we have a multiracial cast from different planets of young people who find a mysterious derelict spaceship and are under the command of Captain Janeway from Lost in Space.
Right. Yeah. So
Admiral Janeway.
Kate Mulgrew is coming back, and she's going to reprise a character, but she's going to be an emergency training hologram in the form of Janeway. And
okay.
Yeah, and it takes place in the Delta Quadrant 5 years after the events of Star Trek Voyager's finale. So they must come upon either like a Delta flyer, I don't know if that gets left behind, or a shuttle or something, some Voyager technology that had gotten left behind, and Janeway's emergency training hologram is in it and helps them in their adventures. So
apparently one of the characters is said to have connections to the original series. So
interesting.
Not sure exactly what that's about.
It does look from the animation that all the characters aside from Janeway are non-human, presumably non-Federation, given that they're in the Delta Quadrant. So we'll see how that goes and whether that works or not. So it should be interesting. Anything else? I don't think there wasn't a lot of information otherwise about that series that I could find.
No, there's also been and they've kept that one pretty close to the vest so far. There's also a scheduling, at least, of another Star Trek movie.
Right. That's what I was going to get to next. Yeah. They June 9th, 2023. So at least 2 years out. They've put it on the schedule. So that doesn't mean
doesn't mean much.
Yeah. They may not even have a script or a director or anybody yet. They just said we want.
Well, they know it's a JJ movie, but beyond that,
have we been told? Because even that I didn't get the sense that we even had that much.
I thought it sounded like that. At least it was if it was going to happen, it was going to happen with JJ Abrams type of deal.
Yeah, I believe I got that, but I didn't get whether it's going to be another Kelvin timeline or something else.
Yeah,
right.
There's no details of plot, and let's be honest, right now I'm just like, whatever.
I haven't even finished watching the last of those by Simon Pegg.
Well, the interesting, so we've had so many rumors of new Star Trek movies over the last few years because we had the Quentin Tarantino R-rated Star Trek movie, which apparently is now dead. We've had Noah Hawley from what is he did
Fargo is the movie he's known for.
Fargo, okay, yeah. So he was going to do a Kelvin timeline movie. There was a talk of a Christopher Pine's Kirk with his father George Kirk, played by Chris Hemsworth. That would have happened, which actually would have been fun. But that's apparently not going to happen. So there's no idea of what this would be, and a lot of this has to do with corporate politics and how Paramount and CBS were separate, and Paramount owned movie rights and CBS owned TV rights, and neither of the twain should meet, which is how we ended up with a Kelvin timeline, because they had to reboot it, because that's all they could do. And now they're again under the same corporate parent, I think, or something. Something has changed where they can have more cooperation. And so
Viacom, which owned Paramount, bought CBS.
Okay.
And put it under the CBS label. So now it's all CBS Paramount. And that's why now CBS All Access is Paramount Plus.
Right.
And the one issue with like the Chris Pine and Chris Hemsworth movie is in 2009, both of them were relatively unknown.
Yeah.
Now both of them are big buck actors. So
right.
And apparently financial considerations were what made that Star Trek 4 thing fall apart.
Yep.
Now, also, we should be cautious about this, because when studios announce dates for franchise tentpoles like this, they're essentially marking territory and saying, we're planning on putting something out on this date as a signal to other studios.
Exactly.
Put your thing, unless you want to go directly up against us, know that we're putting something out here, so you can schedule yours away from that. And it's effectively a kind of cartel thing, to where they're publicly kind of negotiating release dates. But that doesn't mean this is going to happen. These dates get announced, and then the project falls apart or spins forever in development hell.
Yeah. So it's Although on the other hand, just as a sort of devil's advocate version of that, or other kind of version of way to approach that, is now that they have the whole Paramount Plus property with all of this Star Trek, being created, all these series, creating a movie to continue to draw attention to that. I mean, this is what Disney has famously done with its MCU and Star Wars properties. And just from everything that Paramount is doing with First Contact Day and what I'm going to talk about next, it seems like they're following the Star Wars model very closely. So I'd be curious to see if they are going to try to make something that connects with the existing series on Paramount Plus. That would be an interesting.
I just had a kind of a nasty thought. Instead of Discovery Season 5.
What's that?
Instead of Discovery Season 5, have a Discovery movie.
Oh, that could be. Yeah, that would be interesting. Then just move it into the movies. Okay.
I predict it won't do well.
I know. I know. That's why I said it was kind of a nasty thought. I was like, I don't want to see that.
Right. So that would be, and so that's really all we know about a Star Trek movie as a date. The only other thing I want to mention is that they've put on a schedule Star Trek Mission Chicago in April 2022, which is a fan convention a la Star Wars. Their what do they call it? The Star Wars experience that they do every year.
Star Wars Celebration.
That's right. So big.
I predict
big event.
Lots of Piece of the Action cosplay if they're doing this in Chicago.
I know it definitely should be. But so it'll be. They're trying to get the same buzz, and it would coincide with First Contact Day, April 5th, and that would be have all the actors there and all that sort of stuff.
They're doing it in the wrong place. They can't do it in Chicago. It's First Contact Day. Where did First Contact happen?
It has to be
Bozeman, Montana, which is only about 200 miles from me.
I don't know that
even
they
that.
have the convention facilities there for that.
They've got a major university there, so they can find it.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm just wrote that because it'd be a lot easier. I could just drive to Bozeman for it instead of Chicago. But
I'm with you. Actually, they should have it here in Boston because they're going to be unveiling a Leonard Nimoy statue at the Museum of Science in Boston in honor of our native son Leonard Nimoy. It's going to be the Vulcan hand salute, which comes from a Jewish prayer hand gesture that Leonard Nimoy adapted. But that's really cool. I just wanted to mention that, and they're fundraising for that now.
So is it just the hand gesture, or is it a whole body?
Just a hand.
Nimoy?
Just a hand.
Just a hand. Yeah.
Talk to the hand. Okay.
It'll be a giant hand. Yeah.
That's kind of cool. I've seen the renderings of what it's going to look like. It's going to be pretty cool.
Yeah, it is pretty cool. And the nice thing is, I don't want to spend too much time on it. It's a personal interest to me, but it's really cool. So that's all the Star Trek news I've been able to pull together based on all this stuff. It's an exciting time for Star Trek fans. There's lots happening. lots of new stuff coming, and that's really good to hear. Anything left to say about this, Father Cory?
Nothing here.
Jimmy?
Nothing here.
Nope.
All right. Well, I want to throw it to you, patrons. Let us know what you think of any of this, what we talked about, and what you're interested in, what you'd like to see us do. So we do want to hear from you. We do want to take a moment to thank you, our patrons, who make it possible for us to create The Secrets of Star Trek and all the shows at StarQuest. We could not do this without your continued financial support. So let us know about what you think by visiting this post on Patreon, leaving some feedback there, or send an email to trek@sqpn.com. You can always subscribe to The Secrets of Star Trek. Follow it by visiting sqpn.com/trek. There are links there to all the various podcast directories. Until next time, Jimmy Aiken, thank you for joining me and sharing The Secrets of Star Trek.
Thanks, Dom.
Father Cory Stika, thank you as well.
Thank you, Dom.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to The Secrets of Star Trek on StarQuest.